record. There we go. Wait. Here.
Dude, should I ping one more time? I feel bad.
I think, oh,
I don't
I
know if
think
people
we
know
can
to
do that.
check like announcements. That's like Helen said, people don't check their phones.
Hmm.
Screw it. It's the last meeting anyway, so I'll just keep spam pinging.
Yeah.
All the chronic Discord users can complain.
Yeah, you guys can start. I'm just going to like in a minute, slowly admit more people.
I mean, we kind of want everyone to be here, so we'll wait for a few more people. All right, I'll start at 8:49. Oh, okay, guess I'm starting. All right, so advice for IB exams is to create a study plan. So these are big exams, so you want to start studying well before, probably a few weeks before at least. And first is understanding the exam format. And this probably shouldn't be too big of a problem because your teachers will help you prepare for that as well. A lot of the times, the first semester final is actually just a practice IB exam. So it shouldn't be too different from what your teachers give you, and they'll start prepping you more as exams come along. And then look over the course syllabus and identify weaknesses. Um, some of the times for the HL classes, it's like 2 years of material on one test. So it's very common to have forgotten some of the stuff you learned in junior year or even the beginning of senior year. So make sure to go over all the subjects that were taught in the class and then practice the things that you don't feel super confident on. And then plan out a month or more in advance of what or when you're going to study for each of the tests. And it's probably better to study multiple tests at the same time because although they're spaced out, you don't want to be studying between like your math tests and like your econ test or something because that's not a lot of time to study and you might forget something during the actual test. And then do a few mock tests. Your teachers, again, will help you with this, but you can also search up some IB questions online. Like there are a lot of websites that provide IB math questions or IB physics questions, and you can sort of just run through those questions on your own, sort of understanding what they look like and then how to answer them. And also, you might want to time yourself while doing that because there is a time limit for the exams, and that is posted on the link that we gave you guys for the schedule of IB exams. Whose slide was this?
My bad. Okay, college applications. So this is the topic that you guys care least about, so I spend the least time on it. Um, I You have Common App, Coalition, and then school specific application portals. Just generally, like, you can go make an account on those and see what they look like if you want. It's up to you guys. Common App is just, what you use for most of your schools. Like UW's on Common App now. And I know they used to be on Coalition, I think, but Coalition is, to be honest, I've never used it. I don't really know that many people who have, but I know some schools only use Coalition. So when you want to start applying to colleges, you want to research like, the schools that you want to go to, obviously, and you want to apply to, and what platform they use. And then MIT has a school specific application portal because they think they're special. UC, same thing. Important aspects. So these are what you need to apply to college. This is stuff that you guys should probably know already, but you have stats like your GPAs and transcripts. You have your test scores, and then you have your extracurriculars. So what you do outside of, whoa, come down. You have what you do outside of class. You have your essays that communicate who you are as a person. You're not just like a robot unless you are. And then you have your recommendations. And to be honest, recommendations are the most underrated part of your application, but I'll get more into that. Whoever covers recommendations will get more into that. Okay, general timeline. So end of junior year, this is when you ask for recommendations. If you haven't done so already, I would. I know for those of us who are taking IB diploma or have IB block classes, it is definitely the teachers fill up fast, essentially. So They might already be full, to be honest. Depends on how, fail your classes in terms of jumping at them. You have to take your ACT, SAT if you haven't done it already. I would suggest doing it. We can get into the whole like test optional, whether test optional actually means test optional discussion. I'm sure you guys can do your own research on that, but I would suggest taking it. Especially if you apply to schools that require it, since I think 3 of the Ivy Leagues went back to requiring it. So June through August, you have to write your essays. Try to finish up your personal statement first. I know that there are different strategies people take in terms of like how they approach their essay timeline. Like some of my friends, they said that it was more helpful for them to write some of the more smaller supplemental essays first and then move to the personal statement, just so that they could get a vibe of how to write essays and what essays are looking for. You have to create your college list. You have to buffer up your ECs one last time. So if you have any like, if you have a research program or kind of an internship, make sure that gets done well. And something that I will say about that from personal experience is that if you have something coming up this summer, or even if you don't, if you want to find something, you probably should, and I would suggest it. And when you are doing that thing, do it to the best of your ability. And if you can get a rec letter from it. So definitely don't skimp out on your, one last EC that you're trying to get in. Yeah, get that rec letter good if you can. Visit schools. This is something that personal opinion of mine is that visiting schools is kind of a waste of time before you actually get into schools, because at the end of the day, you know, you don't know if you're going to get into the schools you visit. But some people find it helpful to visit schools so that they know which schools to apply for. So people have different perspectives on this. It's, your personal preference and obviously the preference of your families and your parents, right? Whether they spend that money and whether they spend that time. Okay, September through November, you have to take your ACT and SAT if necessary. Review my essays. At this point, if you're just starting your essays, it's a little bit late. I know personally for me, I just started most of my essays at this point. Definitely was a very stressful time because, it's a lot of essays to write if you apply to something like 20 schools. So yeah, write your essays, especially your early schools, prioritize those, your UCs, your UW, anything like that. I'm assuming, most of you are gonna apply, if not all of you are gonna apply for UW. So get that done. Don't procrastinate. And yeah, get you a teacher and counselor vaccine, and you don't submit them, your teachers do. And how the process works essentially is you go into that application portal. There's this like drop down form. You say, here's my teacher. You put in their email and then you go to your teacher. Well, before this, you should go to your teacher in person and talk to them, make sure they're willing to write a recommendation letter for you. After they agree to write a letter for you, if they're nice enough, you can go into the portal, you put their email down, you hit the button, and then the portal automatically sends an email to their email. So you don't get to see the letter. You don't get to like submit it, for the teacher, because obviously that's not ethical. The teacher has the direct pipeline to submit it. And there is something called like the waiver, whether or not you waive your right to see the letter. The general consensus advice is that you should waive your right to see your rec letter, because if you don't, colleges will know, and colleges don't trust your rec letter as much if they know that you can see it. So basically, you should always waive that right. Everyone I know waived it. If you have a different perspective, feel free to, reach out or say it, or whatever. But yeah, so waive your right to, see your rec letter. Make sure you do that. December through February, that's when you write your OD subs. I know that most schools have their deadlines in early January. So for a lot of you, it's going to be December is when you finalize those. And you probably will have received your early decisions already. So for the, lucky, fortunate few, for those of us who, get into schools and know what they're going based on their, early actions or early decisions, you're free. You don't have to do anything. You can see all your friends stress out while you sit there and you watch Netflix. Okay, March through May, you get all your decisions and you commit to a school. So that's the general timeline. And obviously those of us who are seniors haven't finished with the timeline. We get our final decisions back next week. So yeah. Next slide. Okay, general advice that we want to put out there. You are worth more than your college decision. Despite what, people might tell you, despite what, A2C might tell you, you're worth more than a college decision. You don't have to try to impress, just be yourself. Obviously don't go on your college application and fabricate things you guys never did. It's unethical. Um, show the best of yourself and your personal qualities, not your achievements necessarily. This is especially true for your essays. Don't just repeat your resume, and try to tell a story about who you are as a person, right? Essays, a lot of the time, especially nowadays, it's not always about, how much of a creative writing class did you take and like how well can you write the essay. Sometimes admissions officers just want to get an idea of who you are as a person and what your background is. So yeah, that's that. Especially so something that I want to like bring up is that like, for example, Duke is no longer rating the quality of your essays, right? No longer the quality of how good your writing is. It's more about the content, especially with AI existing nowadays. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Write about who you are as a person. Don't shy away from things. I personally wrote about, being Chinese American. There's people online who say like don't write about, your ethnicity, your race, whatever. It's my opinion that you should just write about who you are. So that's one part of my essays. Oh yeah, and track your applications, track your deadlines and requirements, so you do forget to submit an application. Applications are long, and I know people who have, realized really late that they didn't fill out the application fully. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Go through the full application in the portal, look at what they need. I personally organized my essays using a Google Doc, Google Drive. You can do that if you want. You can use Word if you want, if you want a psychopath. But yeah, just make sure you organize your stuff. Don't forget to do your essays. Begin early, summer. I think the prevailing theme of this presentation is to not procrastinate. I think those of us who don't procrastinate, end up with less stress and do well. So, oh yeah, some schools they do check demonstrated interest. For example, I know Purdue did. So Purdue, you can go into a common data set. So if you don't know what that is, you can search up. I'll put it in the chat, but basically like school name and then common data set, and then that will show you like their priorities as a school, like what they want to see. Some of them will say that they track demonstrated interest. You can also just Google it. So if they do track demonstrated interest, go to the website. I think some schools like there's a rumor that they track clicks on the website, something like that. You can email their admissions office. That's not unheard of. Don't be nervous to just write a professional email. Don't come off as a bad person. Write an email asking questions, stuff like that. I emailed Purdue personally. They ghosted me, but turned out okay. So end of the day, show your interest. Try to do your best on that, especially if the school considers it. If it doesn't, then don't bother wasting your time. Next.
Wait, before we go on, can I just like elaborate on something since I wrote this slide?
Yes, yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
thank you, thank you. Okay, so I really wanted to emphasize one point on this slide, which is that don't try to show off, right? I know this is like I know some people are like, oh, you gotta like show off, you gotta like impress, you gotta market yourself. That's a very, very common theme. You don't want to market yourself as in, oh, I can look at all the things I'm done. Aside from the fact that it makes you seem like shallow and stuff like that, college AOs they are not gonna be impressed by that. Like, I'm sorry, but basically the thing is these people have seen Olympic gold medalists, they have seen ISTEP finalists, they have seen all sorts of like medalists, international awards. Like the better bet is if you just like focus all your application on stuff like, oh, I'm so great, shouldn't admit me. Like that's not gonna work. Instead, focus on your intellectual like qualities. I think a phrase that felt really helpful for me was um pretend that you're trying to get recruited by professors at the school. So imagine for like a sports team, you're trying to get recruited, right? Say this is like the same before professors, and then the AOs are just like the scouts trying to look for you, right? So try to think like, oh, how if I go to this university and work with these professors, what kind of qualities will I bring to the table? How can I work with others, and become a good academic? So I think like yeah, just don't try to like just make yourself a list of accomplishments because that really won't work. And it also makes you look personally kind of bad. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that completely. And Helen's been doing great on college apps, so I would listen to his advice. Something else I'll add on is I think it depends on not just marketing, not necessarily okay, not marketing yourself, but presenting yourself as someone who can bring qualities to the school. Something more than that is also just telling your story. I said this earlier, don't shy away from parts of your identity. Colleges, admissions officers, they love to see you as a whole person, right? You want to be able to tell them who you are, how you became who you are, who you want to be in the future, and why you want to be that, and what proof of that you have. For example, especially if you want to, go into a certain career path, you want to be able to show that and write passionately to it. College applications are more than just your resume. It's about you as a person. They're not just admitting your resume, right? So tell a good story and tell a story of who you are, right? Write well to it, write convincingly and passionately, and yours will be fine.
Well,
Go ahead.
actually, Evanston a website of, I'm guessing, a lot of different common data sets. I think, yeah, I think that's pretty helpful. So go check that out. Use Savannah's method or Evans method, both work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Next, I think. Okay. Yeah, and if you guys have any more like, general questions or advice about college applications, I'm personally fine if you text me if I'll give you, a decent response. I don't know if the other seniors are fine with you texting them, so DM me if you have any more questions or anything like that. Okay, on stats. So stats are important, but they're not the only factor. So to my understanding, obviously I'm not an admissions officer. If I was, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'm a high schooler, so I can't give you the, be all end all on, how much stats matter and how much they don't. I know some schools emphasize them more, especially more difficult schools like, MIT, CMU, technical schools like that. They want to be able to see that you did well in classes because they want to know that you won't fail out of their college because some schools are notoriously hard. So you want to be able to show that you have what it takes to succeed. And that's just the impression that, generally these schools have made to everybody. And that's doesn't mean that they're the only factor though, right? You don't need a perfect 4.0 to get into MIT. You don't need like this and this to get into CMU. Like none of that is the be all end all. Stats are just basically what they see first, and it's something that they use to help them understand your application. And you don't need to take the SAT 10 times to get that 1550 plus. To be honest, it's gonna be worse for colleges that require you to submit every score, right? There's a lot of colleges out there. I personally didn't do the research on which ones that do, but there's colleges out there which require you to submit every score. So there are some that let you submit basically the best super score. And what that just means is the best combination of your math and reading and writing score, right? And it's something similar for the ACT, I believe. So you don't have to take these tests a jillion times. You don't have to waste all your time on it, right? At some point, there's opportunity cost. Time you spend on that prepping for that test could have been better spent on your essays. Okay, so schools are holistic, right? They all say this. You will hear this a lot. It's kind of a buzz term that gets thrown out a lot in college applications. But I definitely will agree that this is true.
No way.
可以。
Please mute your mic. Thank you.
How you can also just mute them if you're hosting the meeting. And it's
I'm not
easier.
sure who that was actually. So,
Oh, it's just
yeah.
everyone who's unmuted. But it's okay. It's okay if you're not muted. I made that mistake before too. So, but yeah, colleges are holistic. So
No way.
essentially,
去吃完赶紧睡觉了。
okay, so essentially that just means that they're not just looking at your GPA, right? So they look at your essays, your GPA, your ECs, your personal info, and you can check the school's common data set to see the average test scores, GPA, everything like that. And this is pretty important. So I think, okay, well, something to say is that just because you have like the average GPA or higher than the average GPA does not mean you will be admitted. It doesn't mean that at all, not even close. To be honest, you shouldn't even think that you have a better chance. Like you have like the baseline chance basically. Everything else on top of that is what decides whether or not you get in. Something else that you consider is just because you're below the average doesn't mean you won't get in. You still have a pretty good chance based on everything else. Especially personal info. I know that schools, if you tell them about external circumstances, like, why you couldn't get that A in that class, why you got a C, or why you failed a particular assignment or a test, if it's a reasonable thing, like, some kind of illness. I don't have that too much experience with this kind of stuff because I didn't have external circumstances like this to report. But you can go do the research and what colleges actually like to see as external circumstances. But I know that if you do have those valid circumstances, then colleges will take that into account, right? I know a guy who was like, well, I don't know him personally, but like someone I saw was like, homeless for a year and he got into Harvard despite like, having a bunch of bad grades that year. It's just things like that. Colleges will consider it. So do your research and dig deep. Don't give up just because you don't think you have the stats, but be realistic too, right? So yeah, just put your mind to it. You guys got it.
Okay, along with your stats, you're going to report your activities or extracurriculars. These can include things like sports, community service, any like internships, groups that you're a part of, or competitions that you've been participating in. And then the things that you want to highlight with this information is leadership positions. So if you're on like the executive board of something, or if you helped in like managing or organizing something, or if you're like a captain on a sports team, all of those things you can include on these. And also you could look at any competitions that you've been a part of. So alongside like any like awards for placing in a certain event, you could also look at recognition things, or if you were given like a recognition award for a certain skill, or maybe like a high score in a certain event, but you didn't place, you can still include those on there, just to show that you were involved in this and that you were like a longtime member of something. Yeah, and so along with that, colleges will value things that you've done for a long period of time over maybe like a one-time opportunity or something that was only over like the course of a couple months. So if there's something that you were a part of for all 4 years of high school, that will be really strong and helpful for your application. So it doesn't always have to be something that's super closely tied to your academic pursuits. Like it doesn't have to be aligned with like your major or like your field of interest. You can also just look at things that you have done that strengthen you as a person. And maybe if you were part of like a community board or something tied to your culture, you can talk about that as well. But you want to make sure that your wording is really specific, because for most portals, your activities list will have a very short word or character count. I know it's like 150 on the Common App, and then for UCs it's a little bit longer, but you want to make sure that you're using certain wording that emphasizes your role in this organization or in the activity, and then the impact that you had. And so you want to look at like the skills that you developed and then how you applied those within the activity. So for this, even though it seems like kind of a smaller part because these like blurbs are so short, you want to make sure that you're revising how you're talking about it and re-editing those a bunch of times, just to make sure that you're making them the strongest that they can be and that they're showing exactly like what you did in this. You don't want to like reuse the same verbs over and over again. And you also, yeah, that's kind of, yeah, those are the important parts. You want to make sure that you're looking at your role and what you did there.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on this too. It's important that you are being realistic here, right? Like, don't, if you did like one internship at like a bio lab, like don't sell it as if you cured cancer when you didn't. Colleges, especially with stuff like that, when they know that high schoolers might not have done it, like they will look for language, or they will look some kind of for credentials that can like back it up, right? Especially if it's research, like they are expecting a rec letter, especially if it's really like impactful research, right? So just don't, be realistic, be presentable, but also,
Yeah, 100%. He's totally right. All right, and next slide. For essays, there are a bunch of different types of essays. I know we talked about them a little bit before, but the main point again is to start early. That's like the running theme here. You want to start like over the summer to brainstorm ideas, and then so you have enough time to revise and edit before early action and early decision due dates are. So you can start with like brainstorming multiple approaches and kind of looking at what parts of you or what experiences you've had have now defined you and kind of guided where you want to go with your life. Yeah, as we talked about before, it doesn't have to be solely like academic or solely talking about your achievements or like what you've won or what you've like accomplished as a student. It can definitely talk about who you are as a person and how your like background or individual experience has shaped you and is going to shape you as a college student. One thing you want to keep in mind is your audience, because you're writing these for admissions officers that have to read so many of these every day. And while you want your essays to stand out, you also don't want to make them seem too formal or inflate yourself too much, because they're not looking for someone who like checks all, like a very certain set of boxes or has like accomplished a certain number of awards or extracurriculars. You definitely want to find the balance between too casual and too formal. And then, yeah, you just want to look at what stands out about you, not only as a student, but also as a person and as someone who is going to go out and contribute to the world. So you want to look at your values and how your experiences have now shaped you and why you're motivated to do certain things. So you can look at like impactful moments or just like a combination of who you are and how you felt in the past. Yeah, and then so some of the types of, there's a personal statement which focuses on who you are, and then there are also like essays about like why major or why like a certain college, why a certain program, things like that. And with that, you want to talk about what like details drew you to a specific school, like if you like maybe if you visited it or if you like heard about certain research opportunities, things like that, or if there was like a certain experience in school or like outside of school that drew you towards a certain like field or area of study. And then there are also community essays where you talk about maybe like a community that is important to you and why you felt like that community has now impacted you and like what values that community instilled in you. And then diversity, where you talk kind of about your background again. And some of these could overlap with your personal statement, but it's also definitely important to look at different aspects of you and how that might like make you a more well-rounded person. Some ask for a challenge that you've gone through or maybe like how an interest developed. And then there also are scholarship essays, which will ask you to answer a different question. You might find them in like a different location as well. And so you definitely want to start doing research on those earlier so you're not like caught off guard by any additional deadlines. Like for like sometimes honors college essays have a different deadline, but you want to make sure that you're staying on top of those.
Yeah, and just I want to jump in on essays because I don't think the UC essays would cover on this one. The UC essays has a few that overlaps with some of these topics. There's one where it's about contribution to your community through service. There's one about diversity. Was it? Maybe there wasn't. I don't remember. But there's one about like, a challenge, something that challenged you. There's one about like a subject, so interest. So, three of those words, they were covered by the UCs. The UCs also ask you about like creativity. In general, for the UCs, I can send a form that was really useful for me when I was writing my UC essays. I think in general though, for your UCs, your UC essays, University of California essays, you want them to portray different aspects of who you are, and also just, read what the prompt is and answer the prompt. That goes for all the essays actually. Something that really gets hounded on and isn't emphasized enough is that you should be answering the prompt. The admissions officers know what they want you to write better than you know what they want you to write. So it's like basically if they're telling you write about this, don't think that, oh, it's like a opportunity for me to like, go on this tangent about this. Answer the prompt. And yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely really important. And so while there might be some like overlap, like some schools might ask for some like the same geared question towards like community or like the same diversity question, you want to look at like the details of what exactly they're asking for. And yeah, don't try to interpret it into something else that it's not. I found that using like there are a lot of organizational tools that you can use to make sure that you aren't doing more work or creating more work for yourself. Like if there really are two colleges that are asking for the same information in the same essay, then you can use the same essay, kind of just edit it to make sure you're fitting the right ones. But yeah, make sure you're keeping track of the different questions.
Also, I want to add something with like writing style. So for personal statement, you can like be like more flowery and stuff like that. But don't do that for supplements, please. Some it like if you use flowery language and like descriptiveness and like try to make it all poetic and stuff, college's reaction to that is from either like meh to like I don't like it. I think UCs really hate it when people do that. So does MIT's to an extent. So yeah, supplementals to the point. And you only have like 150 words, so you can't waste words anyway.
Okay, I do want to jump on this. I will refute this for some schools. You guys need to get the vibe of the school, to be honest. Like Helen's completely right. UCs hate it. They specifically say it took a little bit of digging for people to find it, but UC admissions officers have said they hate flowery writing in their essays, and there's no personal statement from the UCs. Just keep it out, answer the essay simply, and stuff like that. Like Ray says, what writing, like creative writing. Basically, don't like have your whole UC essay be like an extended metaphor, and it all builds up to like this like it's just cliche. They don't want to see like creative writing. UCs hate it. MIT doesn't like it either. Apparently, it just generally some schools don't like it, but some schools do. Like I will say that the general consensus among people who have applied and people who like get into these schools, like NYU for example, they apparently like creative essays, and I've seen some really creative essays that get people into NYU. Especially in the more if you're applying for more of a creative writing or liberal arts major, some of these schools they will like more creative supplementals, but you guys have to get the vibe of the school and do your research. But Helen's right, some of these schools they hate it, so make sure you know which type of school you're applying to.
Okay, we only have 10 minutes left, so yeah, we should speed up a bit through the slides. I think we're almost done actually. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about rec letters. We talked a little bit about it before, but basically you want to get them as early as possible. and secure them before end of junior year. If you guys applied to any summer programs for this summer, you might have already had some teachers that agreed to write a rec letter for you. And these are good teachers to also have them write for college. And basically in August or September of the summer, you just want to tell them like, hey, I would be very grateful if you would write me a rec letter for college, and just make sure that they're on board and they're willing to do it, because rec letters, they're a lot of efforts and they need time. The teachers need time to actually write your letters well and think about sort of their experience with you. So make sure to give them all the time that they need. You can't just like tell them, oh, next week I have something due. Could you please write it for me? It's 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 just not very great for them to have to write a rec letter in 1 week on top of everything else they have to do, such as teaching classes and preparing and everything. Basically, just tell them beforehand. And then also check the counselor website for information on the counselor rec letter. I know a lot of colleges require a rec letter from counselors as well as from teachers. So that's something that you also need to get on top of pretty early. And then most schools want teacher recs from different core topics. And I would say from personal experience, what I did was one teacher from a STEM class and then one teacher from a humanities class. So I had my math teacher and then my language arts teacher. So those were my two. And this is good to sort of show diversity in your interests. Schools don't really want to see someone who's just really into math and nothing else. They want to see sort of both sides of you. And that goes to sort of the holistic admission review and not just stats or one thing that you're interested in. And then when you're choosing teachers, choose teachers that you know well, such as if you had several years or you've done in their class. For my language arts teacher, I was kind of lucky that I had her for 2 years in a row. So I chose her and I asked her if she would like to write my rec letter, because I had her for 2 years and I felt that she probably knew me well throughout these 2 years. And or if you've done exceptionally well in their class, such as you're really good at math or something like that, and you think you've had a lot of meaningful sort of interactions with the teacher and something that they can really write about, then you should also ask them to write a rec letter, because it'd be more impactful if the teacher can write about specific moments that sort of show who you are. And then a lot of these teachers will give you a sort of worksheet or questions for you to fill out that sort of tells them what you want them to write about. And then it should highlight specific moments you've enjoyed in their class, or specific moments that highlight qualities that about you that they can easily write about. And this just makes their job easier and probably leads to a better rec letter. If you can cite specific times where you did something in their class or something that shows something about you. And obviously they'll add on their own sections. Is not, most teachers don't just do a copy and paste. They'll also write about your opinions and what they think of you in the class. But I think a lot of counselors, since they have so many students, they will often copy and paste these brag sheets because they just don't have the time to personally write a rec letter. And honestly, I don't know, at least personally, I haven't interacted that much with my counselor, so they probably can't add on super much even if they wanted to. So especially for counselors, make sure that what you give them is what you want to write, is what you want them to write, and is super detailed. And then something that's not really on this slide is external rec letters. If you were involved in some sort of research or external project or some volunteer thing that you were really involved with, you should get someone in whoever you worked with to write a rec letter for you, especially if it's a big part of your application. It will sort of show that you were really involved and like colleges know what you were like in whatever you've done. So I know people who got letters from research professors or people who were really into law. I had a friend who got a rec letter from a judge. So something like that, that sort of shows your commitment to whatever extracurricular that was a big part of your application.
Okay, I also want feel obligated to jump in here, especially with council rec letters. And I saw Grace put a question like how you read a brag sheet. The brag list is just what you do, like in general, like your ECs. You can basically copy and paste and then show it from Common App. That's what the brag list means. It's not like what you did in like the counselor's class. The counselor doesn't teach class. So I want to jump in. I have talked to my counselor and I've seen like the council recommendation that she wrote for me. It is basically just a copy and paste of the brag list. And unless you guys want it to be like something that, counselors, admissions officers just skim over and disregard completely. And, unfortunately, public school counselors, they have a lot of students. They don't have the time to, individualize and personalize for everybody. They're not going to hunt you down to, get that information from you. So when you guys write that blacklist, I think counselors usually give you a Google form. When you guys get that Google form, make it detailed and focus on specific things that you think your other rec letters can't capture. For example, I think for my counsel, like I basically ended up sending her like an update about like service stuff I did at school and like activities and things I did through school clubs that weren't really conveyed anywhere else in the application because some of the clubs I did a lot of things that I couldn't, didn't have the word count to fill in, and especially service related things. So I sent that supplementary material to my counselor, and then she added it to the recommendation letter. So stuff like that is something you guys should be considering. If you guys can't get it in anywhere else in the application, and you really want to highlight it as part of who you are, like that's something that you can consider. Make it really detailed and really send that to your counselor.
All right, and sort of to end off the college app section is you are worth more than a college decision. I'm pretty sure this was on another slide before, but whether you will be successful depends on you, not the college you go to. If you go to a college that you think isn't that great, it doesn't mean that your life is over. You will find success as long as you work hard and sort of show commitments. And understanding the process is difficult, and sometimes things happen for reasons out of your control. And be okay with the rejection. I'm sure all of us here that are talking today have received rejections, but we also received acceptances from other schools that are still amazing, and you will end up succeeding no matter what happens, right? And also, a rejection from one school doesn't mean a rejection from another school that's like similar or like you won't go to college or something like that. It's important to not sort of get caught up on rejections or getting into a super good college because that it doesn't make you feel good. It makes you always feel like you're chasing something that is unachievable or you think is something that's like good and you yourself should be better. Don't base who you are on a college decision. Just know that you will be successful no matter where you go, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in. If you don't end up getting accepted into any college, going to community college and transferring to UW is always a very valid option. And the stigma around community colleges and that transfer pathway is something that's, honestly a shame because to be honest, yeah, just keep that in mind.
All right, so this is our last meeting for IB Buddies, right? So thank you for being with us, and we have a form. Please only fill this out if you're a current IB junior. This is for a CAS project to get feedback so we can do a reflection. And we don't have time to do Q&A in the chat, so if it's possible, please go back into the Discord and you could do Q&A over there. But otherwise, thank you for being with us today. And yeah, recordings will be posted. So yeah. All right. See you.
Thank you guys so
Bye. Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
if you guys have any questions, feel free to message me as well.
Yeah.
You can message any of us. Right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm ending the meeting now. Bye. Thank you.